Welcome, everyone, to episode number 12 of my podcast. We got guest Cordovan, the SSG community manager, here today.
Hello, nice
And
to be here.
yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff we can talk about. A lot of things I wanted to ask you, Cordo. I mean, I
There's
know
a bunch
we,
of stuff I said no to. I'm sorry.
no, no, no,
You
it's,
gave me a list of questions, and I was like, I can't answer that. I'm sorry,
yeah,
man.
no, no, it's,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
1,000% understand that there's things you can't talk about. Believe me, I get it. And if you can't talk about something, then just say you can't talk about that. You're
yeah,
not going to
yeah.
hurt my
But we
feelings.
did, and we figured out what we can talk about, so it should be a
Right.
pretty good show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I have a couple announcements for the podcast first. This week I did just put this podcast on Spotify. So you can now listen on Spotify in addition to YouTube and YouTube Music. So I know there's a community of people who don't really like using YouTube for podcasts, so I wanted to make sure I got it on Spotify as well. And I finally figured out how to do that this week. And I want to try to get it on Apple Music as well, but I'm having problems with my account and getting all that to work. But maybe if I can get that to work, then maybe. But thought we would start with Cordovan. Is it Cordovan, right? Cordovan,
Yeah.
not Cordo. Okay. Sometimes I think the community agree.
Whatever you want to call me is fine.
Sometimes the
I've
community,
I've used many. I'm like Gandalf. I've used many names.
yeah,
So,
yeah. You can be like me. You can't figure out a name. You just mash them all together, and make that your
yeah,
Twitch name.
yeah.
So, all right. So I thought maybe I'd ask you to just introduce yourself. I mean, most people probably know who you are, but for people who are listening on YouTube, and there's quite a few people who actually watch my YouTube channel because I know because they comment and they may have not played the game for a long time, or maybe played once, or very new players may not know who you are. So if you would just tell everyone who you are and what you do at SSG.
Sure. My public persona name is Cordovan, and my real name is Jerry Snook, and I'm the community manager for Standing Stone Games. I was initially hired back with Warner Brothers back in 2010, and prior to that, I was a DDO player from June of 2006, just a few months after release. I started playing the game, got really into it. In early 2007, I started a podcast, and it was about Dungeons and Dragons Online. And I did that and brought on some guests, some folks like Tolero as a guest host. And she ended up leaving first to get hired by then Turbine. And I was hired a few years later under Warner Brothers and have been with the Dungeons and Dragons Online team in some capacity since that time. So I have managed to weather a long business road here over since 2010, and I've still been with the game, and am happy to do so. And I was hired as a underling community person, and have really essentially been in charge since about 2017 or so. And prior to that, I basically made sure everyone knew how I felt anyway. So eventually, I guess they just let me do it. So
No, that's awesome that you started as a player and as a fan, and then slowly merged into actually working for the game. That's really cool.
yeah, I should mention that since 2017, since we became Standing Stone Games, I have been the community manager both for Dungeons and Dragons Online and the other game, the Lord of the Rings Online. So the actual say workload that I do on a weekly basis is for both games,
Mhm.
and it's as everything that Standing Stone Games is developing is my purview.
So what kind of things do you do? Like we know that you are in charge of like the forums and the Discord and all that, but like what other things do you think would be interesting to explain to people like your job, like what do you do? Like other than that
If
at
you
the
think
company?
about game development, you've often got a structure of a development team that a core group of people who are hired to make a game. And that team interfaces with really an additional layer, which is everything from accounting to marketing, and in often cases, community. And the main conduit is to be the external voice inward and the inward voice external. So, for example, Torque will have a new raid that just came out in DDO, and at some point about this time, we need to start asking questions. Well, how did it go? Did people like it? What did they like about it? What did they not like about it? We've got another patch, maybe two patches to go before we really need to turn our attention to other stuff here. So, what do we need to get done? And all that kind of stuff is really the conduit by which the community part of the game flows through. So, it's not just, say, being the forum or the dude who posts on X or whatever like that. There's a lot of communication inward in addition to inward communication outward. And each of those are a big part of the job. So it really is to be a conduit to make sure that your voice is being heard and that our voice is being heard to you as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I never really thought about it that way, but yeah, that's interesting. Huh. So you're kind of the liaison to from the representative of the players, I guess you
Hmm.
could say. That's okay.
Hmm. Yep.
So I wanted to ask you as well, like what?
I'm also the dude who does post on X and it
Yes,
runs the Discord and the
yes.
forums and all that other stuff too. So it is a job that, over time will kind of do its own thing. So
So what is it? So it must be interesting. Or what's your relationship like with the game? Like how often do you really get a chance to? Because as I know you started out as a player. Do you still play the game a little bit just for fun, like on the
yeah,
side and all that?
yeah.
Because I was
I've been doing this now. It'll be 15 years this November that I've been hired. So 14 years I've been with this game so far. And over that time, there are periods naturally where you're going to play more and you're going to play less. And there are also times where you got to focus on what's going on in the other game because holy
yeah.
moly, everything's on fire over there.
I
That
heard
happens too.
I heard I don't play.
So that you do
Yeah.
have natural ebb and flow in what you play, but I
Yeah.
do play. I've never, even going back to the old podcast days, I've never really been the hardcore meta
Hmm.
raider gear perfecter. I've always been a let's just roll with what we have. It's all good. Let's have fun kind of player. And so I've often been the kind who isn't just a casual though either because I do care about that stuff. It's just that I have a fairly moderate limit that I will be like, well, I'm not going to run that more than X times. Not because I don't want the loot, but just because that's just not how I play video games. And it's not
Yeah.
just a DDO thing either. It's every video game ever that I play,
No, I
frankly.
get that.
You
No,
know?
I'm
So,
probably like
yeah.
somewhere in the middle because I try to talk to and engage with both sets of players. So certainly I play with a lot of like very casual players, but then I also like talking with the
I
like
don't
more
like that term
hardcore.
though for me, and I don't think it's
Yeah.
accurate for me because I'm not a casual player.
Oh
I'm
yeah, I
going to
didn't
say
mean
at
to
this point, I
say
probably
that.
know more about DDO than some percentage of people, and then there's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of people who know more than me too, of course. You do your best to keep up with the meta as it changes, but trust me, it's a job.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't mean
So
casual as in you don't know what you're doing. I
yeah,
meant
yeah,
casual
yeah.
in terms of your
No, but
like
also because
mindset and
I
approach.
will raid and
Yeah.
I do like those skill
Yeah.
limits and I do believe in skill based gameplay and all that. I'm not just here
Yeah.
to click a couple buttons and drink some coffee either. I do take it serious sometimes.
Yeah, what I
So
always like
yeah.
doing in DDO and in other games, I take a concept like an archetype I really enjoy. Like for me, the probably the big one I like is like melee clerics. So I'll like take that concept, and even if that concept may not be super meta, I'll take that concept and then maximize that concept the best I can. And even some people will comment, be like, "Well, why are you playing, a melee cleric or whatever?" And I'm like, "Well, because that's what I want to play, and I will min max that idea." That's what I tend to do.
I'm ahead of I'm so indie man. It was before it was cool. I came up with the favored soul rogue build, and everyone said that it was garbage on the forums. And I stand by the
Yeah,
fact that I basically created an inquisitor and such before it happened. I'm just saying for the record,
yeah.
that build that you were saying back in 2008 sucked. It
Oh,
didn't
which
suck.
one? Which one?
Well, I made an old favored soul rogue build
I said
back
it
when that
sucked.
was like that was no, no, not
Oh,
you. The
oh,
world,
okay.
the world told me it sucked in the podcast. They're like, "What?
Oh,
That's the worst build ever, man." And I was like, "No,
well, I
no. I
think
mean, you know."
I think some players will look at a lot of players will have the mindset where if they see something, maybe if you think of the most min-maxy thing ever is at 100%, this build or this idea might be at 97, and they'll just over exaggerate and be like, oh, that's the worst thing ever because you're not super 100% efficient, but you can still hang in there with everything that matters, and you still have all the power you really need to do the content you want to do.
Right.
So,
And when it comes down to it, I do care about the content of DDO very much. Not just because it's my job, but because this has been my passion for almost 20 years now. So, hopefully some of that comes through as well.
oh, I wanted to ask you, do you have any favorite? I know it's maybe a hard question to answer in your position. Do you have any favorite like classes in the game that you like to play?
Oh
Because you're kind
yeah,
of a melee.
I am
'Cause
I am a well-known cleric player.
right. I was gonna
Yeah, I'm
say,
a battle cleric player.
I think
That
we
just
have
for
that in
yeah,
common because I'm kind of known
yeah,
as the melee cleric guy, and
yeah.
it seems like you, as I saw you playing your Tabaxi Dark Apostate, I think it was for quite a while on your stream.
Hmm.
So that's cool.
Yep. Yeah, I do. I did like that build very much as well. That was really fun. Yeah.
I think the reason I like playing them is my two favorite things to do in this game is I like to play melee DPS and I like to play as a healer support, and that blends those two ideas. That's why I play it. I could play it as a caster healer, but I just don't. I mean, it's cool. Everyone has their own preferences. I just tend to enjoy melees more. That's just my preference. Not to say casters aren't fun and strong and all that. It's just I like playing the melees personally.
So every Friday I do an official live stream, and I've been doing it for, I guess, a decade now, because I've got some videos going back to 2015. And as a result, a lot of what I do in my free time is working up the characters so that I don't totally fall flat and embarrass myself on the live stream, right? But when you're only playing an hour a week on those main characters and then also doing news on the side, you don't get a lot of the process time needed to really keep up with whatever's going on in the game, whether it's gear or content, right? So I am often playing those characters when I play these days. And those characters, just because of the nature of the live stream, it makes the most sense to be playing whatever the current thing is. I don't always do that. There's been whole classes that come out that I've just not really focused on the live stream, but I try in general to be whatever's roughly up there in terms of current. And so as a result, that's what I play most often these days is kind of whatever's current, because either I'm doing that on the live stream or I'm trying to keep up so that I can be there for the live stream in a way that works.
Yeah, no, I mean that's got to be part of your job, right? You want to show everyone what the new thing is. Does that make sense?
You
And
got to get that gear if you
yeah,
can. Even
yeah,
though I have weird dev look on the live stream, that's the best part about the live stream. Over that decade, I wish over the decade I'd saved those amazing. I got my Gibbers Blade for running the first time on hard
nice.
difficulty.
You know, I
First time on a character running it on hard difficulty, and I pulled
wow.
the Gibbers.
I've had some unusually good luck with raids that you all have released. So when Caught in the Web released, I wanted the cleaver. Very first run, I got the cleaver. I pulled it. When what was it? Project Nemesis came out. I wanted the necklace. Very first run, got the necklace.
Yeah, yeah, I have
Uh,
good loot luck too sometimes on stream.
I've
It's
really
great.
Gibbers. I did have to run maybe 30 times. I got it fairly quickly. So I've had historically, like, I know there's people like Drac who've had bad luck. I know he jokes about that a lot on DDO Players News, but
I don't
I have
Gibbers
good luck.
farm. I don't
You
Gibbers
don't
farm,
Gibbers
but I
farm?
do have just naturally one other Gibbers otherwise. So,
Yeah. I get what, because you have characters on every server. I imagine
yeah.
it's you realistically it's tough to be super ultra geared on every character when you have that many
No,
characters.
you're absolutely right. Like I said, thankfully that was never a monster concern of mine. I've often been like, well, I have what I have, and I'm going to get what I'm going to get, and let's use that. So, but yeah, it is difficult, and you do run behind. There's no feasible way unless you were playing on admin characters which didn't play the game like regular, and then you could just self gear them. But then
Hmm.
that's a lot of work too, and I'd rather just play my real characters. So, there's that wall there where I actually have to get all this stuff. I don't. There's no dev hacks or anything like that going on. It's all just straight gameplay.
Yeah, no, I get it. I have a character. I mainly play on Thelanis, but a couple weeks ago we went and raided on Orion, and I have a War Chanter Bard over there, and it was me and Cozy Bean, and well, it was we did the little event, but a bunch of other people showed up, and it was fun. But my character just wasn't geared, but it was okay. We just we dropped difficulty a little bit, and it was fine. Still fun.
Mhm.
All
I
right.
typically run either low Reaper or Elite, depending on whether I care whether it's Reaper or not at that time. Really, usually.
Yeah, I'm mostly the same way. I'll run like R1 usually when I'm leveling, and then if I get to legendaries, depending if it's on my main character, I will try to run like R4, R6 to get gotta get those Reaper points. But
Hmm.
mostly leveling, I'm like low Reaper, and I think that's where most of the community is. Elite R1. I just my experience, it seems like the vast majority of the community is running that, except maybe new players. But
Sadly, it's well known though, because I've embarrassed myself more than enough times on the live stream, that I run one difficulty when it's just me on the keyboard and another difficulty when I'm actually on the air, because it's so much harder to do all that stuff when you're trying to worry about chat and be the voice of the company and all that sort of thing. I get my floor. I'll be like, well, I just ran it last night on R2, so it'll be fine on this, and then it isn't fine whatsoever. So
I was just talking about this on my stream, actually, and that actually impacts. So, as someone who streams a lot, that impacts my builds. I will run a lot of two-handed fighting characters for this reason because I don't have to hit as many active buttons, and you get the strike through. So you can kind of just hold the mouse button down and go forward, and you can still read Twitch chat and all that. If I had to play like a Pillmaster or something where I had to tab target for insta kills and all that, it would be much harder. So I found that it's impacted my build choice for sure. Not gonna lie.
right now I'm playing a warlock, so it's all nice and easy. I just sort of hold that mouse button down, and I'm good. So
I'll have to get to them eventually. I finally decided this year I was going to start doing heroic completionist and actually start down that road. So I've gotten most of the melee stuff down. I'm going to start going to the caster lives. Probably do alchemist next. I've never really played alchemist,
hmm
so that should be fun. So other things, I just wanted to ask you: do you have any favorite quests you like, or have any particular fondness for in the game?
I like a lot of the new work that we've done of late, the past couple of years. But there's also a part of me that loves the classics that date to the earliest parts of the game. So when I actually try to put together a top list, it's like, well, do you really want to keep that one dungeon from 2006 in there? That sort of thing. But I think it's still true that I love like the Vaughn chain.
Oh, okay.
I think the whole Vaughn chain is up there towards my favorite. I love the Minectaran Desert stuff. I think that's excellent. I love I mean, I even like Gwilyn Stand. That's a personal longtime favorite of mine.
Hmm.
I just like it. I love Firestone Inlet.
I like Sworddusk a lot. I know a lot of people don't run that, but
hmm
I really like Sworddusk in terms of the low heroic content. Actually, I think it's level 10 or so, but
I do
I
that all
love.
the time.
Yeah,
That's a main quest runner because you get all sorts of favor and XP from
yeah.
that.
And I have a
Yeah,
very big fondness for Reaver's Reach. I love Reaver's
yeah,
Reach.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I wish we could go back someday and fix
yeah,
that one up a little bit. So,
yeah. That would be awesome if you all ever have the time or decide to do that. I
hmm
would definitely be hyped to hear that.
yeah, make it easier to get to for one, and then
Hmm.
for two, sort out the Dragon Touched armor thing. But
Yeah,
that I think is a fairly big project, unfortunately. So.
I think the only one about that chain, I think the other thing that kind of bothers me is the Prey on the Hunter at the very end has that autofill, which can be a little frustrating. And then I think a lot of people would love to see the flagging removed for Sealer Souls.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And remove that. But actually, I didn't bring that up because I actually think that would be one of the easier parts of it.
Okay.
I think it would be some of the a more functional. How do you get there and how does it look, and then also dealing with um, the system of Dragon Touched armor because you would need if you're going to redo it, it needs to be really up to modern standards in terms of gear acquisition, which means you really need to nuke it from the ground and start fresh, both in the way that it's acquired and sort of how you do it. So,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a pretty full project for the systems team.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
hmm
Yeah, that's a pretty nostalgic pack for me. The first time I got to level 20 was in Reaver's Reach. So,
Yeah.
a lot of nostalgia for it personally. So, any favorite raids? that
Well,
come
I
to
was actually
mind?
just gonna say, except that now that
The new
I'm
one.
on the air, I can't remember what the name of. I've got a name in my head, and it's like that's not the name of the raid. But what the heck is the name of the raid?
Just
Why
describe it.
am I
I should be
like
able to tell
this?
you.
What? No, I am gonna look it up. I am not
Okay.
gonna do this. Yes, Fall of Truth.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's the one.
Oh,
I
okay.
love
Yeah,
Fall of Truth.
yeah.
I love Fall of Truth.
I like the voice lines at the beginning. I always thought the dragon sounded like an '80s metal singer. That's what always comes to mind.
That's true. I really love Demon Queen as well. That even with its somewhat weird 6 to 12 person flagging, I love it, and I like the 6 to 12 person flagging part. I think it's neat.
Yeah. The I think the Hydra. We'll talk about the Hydra rate here in a minute, but the Hydra rate I thought it was real good that you all just did.
Yeah. I like a lot of our raids, honestly. I've always thought the Shroud is a real classic, and I love the kind of multi-stage approach to it. I really like Tower of Despair. I think, speaking of content that would be a massive project to revisit, but we should do someday. Tower of Despair is on that list.
Yeah, I
So,
imagine that one. I mean, I don't know. I'm just speculating. Obviously, I don't know how much work it is, but I imagine with all the because back in the day it had all the ring belt sets. I imagine if you all wanted to recreate that, that would be tons of loot design work.
I think in some ways the issue with Tower of Despair is that it was written back in a day that has since changed so much to the way things are done these days. Both in terms of like underlying structure and process and everything, the code itself, right? Was so I think in some ways you would rebuild a new raid that would mimic the old raid as opposed to trying to quote fix the old raid and make a new version out of that. And that I think is ultimately one of the biggest hangups as to why we haven't gotten to it yet.
One thing that I always thought would be cool is if you all ever did a legendary version, and I know the community would be super hyped if you all decided to do that. But I always thought it'd be cool if instead of ring belt sets based on the enhancement trees, maybe the legendary version bases it on the epic destinies. I always thought that would be a cool thing to see. Maybe a little less, maybe more feasible for y'all because there's so many enhancement trees now with the archetypes.
Yeah.
That seems a little much for work for you
A new
guys.
ring system
I
would be
can't
hot though,
imagine.
wouldn't it? It would be a new ring system would be
Yeah.
pretty hot though. That was hot stuff back when that came out.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. I couldn't imagine with
yeah.
all the enhancement trees how large of a loot list that would be. Jeez. How many? Do you have any idea how many enhancement trees are in the game now? There's a
Oh,
lot.
no, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either. All right. Well, let's see. Oh, okay. Super random, nothing to do with DDO. I had to ask you because I think you mentioned this on your stream once. Are you a twin?
Yes.
I am too.
Okay.
So I was just like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Fraternal.
me
People
too.
say we look alike. A
Yeah,
little less so as we've both aged a little bit, but
yeah. I have a twin.
it's actually he's the reason I started playing DDO.
Really?
Because my if the long version of my story starts at a Best Buy in 2006 when my brother calls me up on the phone and says, "Hey, if you're buying a video game, buy Dungeons and Dragons Online and play it with me." And I was like, "All right."
Nice. See, I have the opposite relationship with my twin brother. I've been trying to get him to play DDO for years, and he won't. So maybe someday I'll get through to him. Okay. Well, I guess we can get now into the recent stuff that's going on in the game. So update 71, we had some release notes for Lamania. The Lamania preview was this week. I did not get a chance. I was just so busy at work this week. I wasn't able to hop on. But I know you all had your first preview this week, and there's 3 new quests that were previewed that the release notes say are coming this spring, and they are being sold in a new way. Players will have the option to purchase them individually or in a group as normal, and the quests that are being sold are the new quest names are Sleeping with the Fishes, Covered Culvert, and Toil and Trouble, and they're going to be sold for 175 DDO points each. And then there's a guest pass for 40 DDO points if you want to do a guest pass, and then they're free for VIPs. So yeah, so what's going on with that? You all decided to do a new approach with the way you're selling these, right?
It really has to do with the timeline of the way it's being released and us wanting to experiment a little bit with the traditional way we release quest packs. We wanted to introduce the possibility of doing sequential storytelling Although in this specific case, they're all each independent stories under a Tavern Tales. The connecting thread is sort of Tavern Tales. But if this works, one theory in the future could be that we could tell some sequential storytelling through the sale of a quest pack that, buy it, get it all, or, lower cost, where you can just kind of buy it as it comes out if you want to, or if you encounter it and run into it, and have that cost be able to be low enough that it's well within the VIP monthly point grant, and perhaps is within a price point that it feels like a smaller purchase rather than a full purchase of a quest pack. So it offers some granularity there. But one of the reasons we're doing this one is we're releasing these quests roughly about, I think the plan is about 2 weeks apart.
Okay.
And that is why we wanted to kind of give it its own little structure as well, because we didn't want people to basically buy the quest pack or get the quest pack as VIP and then go, look, well, wait a second, where's the quests, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to make sure that we called this out as, hey, this is something we're playing around with as a sequential release, and we're going to call it an adventure pass and do it for this next quest pack for Tavern Tales.
Yeah, so the adventure pass gives you buy that, you just have, you're basically
you just get the
pre-ordering.
stuff.
You're going to get it as
and
it
also
comes
if you're
out.
VIP, you just get the stuff, right?
Right.
So it's fine. But yeah.
After all 3 quests release, is the adventure pass going to be pulled from the store and replaced just with an adventure pack, or how's that
No,
going
I
to
think
work?
we're going to keep it like. Well, I mean, we'll see, but I think it'll stay as the adventure pass, and there is a slight discount for buying the adventure pass as well. Just to be clear,
Right.
versus buying them all separate. But I think if this works out and we want to keep adding to this category, then we'll probably just keep adding to the category. But if ultimately this becomes, well, it was fun for this one, maybe we're going to not do this again or not do it much, then we'll have to see where the naming falls.
Okay. So like after the 3 quests come out, the pass will essentially be kind of work like a pack at that point, right? You just buy it and then you'll get the 3 quests.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's 4 quests too, isn't there?
Oh, is there 4? Did I
Yeah,
miss
there
one?
are 4 quests.
Oh, maybe
It's just not on preview for this week.
Oh, okay. So 3 were preview, but there's going to be 4. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
And Troggy was joking in chat. We were talking about this before, but yeah, you all like Troy so much, he named it Adventure Pass after him. Troy Tavern Tales.
Yeah.
Spelled differently though.
Yeah.
His is Tails,
Yeah.
and this is Tales. Okay.
Well, they both in the source book material as well. There are sort of compilation releases of Tavern Tales throughout the editions, and that was really just what we wanted to lean into for this particular quest pack.
Oh, okay. Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that.
I mean, there have been over the years. And we had there was, what is it? Both 4th and 5th had was it 4th and 5th that both did Tales from the Yawning Portal, or is that just 5th?
I'm not sure. I'm not.
But
I'm not super knowledgeable when it comes to pen and paper. I wish I was, but I rely on other people for that when I do these podcasts. But okay, so is this going to be? So you may not be able to talk about this. I don't know. But there was mention in the producer's letter of a progressively unlocking event. Is this related to that, or is that a different thing?
I think that'll be a different thing.
Okay.
That'll be a little bit more similar to the Illithid event.
Okay.
That we ran. I think we're going to have more of a in-game kind of event later this year, and I believe that part of the producer's letter is referencing that.
Okay. Can you say if that's going to be, so is that going to work? Is there going to be free quests later? Is that the plan? You may not be able to tell me, but
we do. Yeah, there are further quests that'll be coming this year outside of the expansion, and then we do have the expansion as well.
Yeah. So the other thing that was mentioned, and this is another one, I don't know how much you can say really, but some of the release notes for Lamania said there was a performance update preview. The release note said, we've made some adjustments to improve game performance with the preview. Like many of our performance changes, these changes touch quite deep inner workings of the game. Then it was asked for players to try a few existing dungeons and relay their experiences. Do you have any idea, or can you say anything about the work being done on that?
So I want to preference my answer, unfortunately, by talking briefly about the other game, which is that we have been in the middle of a very, very hectic character transfer period related to moving players generally from the 32 to 64-bit new game worlds. And as such, I have had to put in, I'm not trying to woe is me or anything, but probably something like 100 hours past couple of weeks on this sort of thing. And so my ability to actually be as into the nitty gritty of what was in this week's Lamania is a little lower than usual. Just to say, I kind of was just like, hey, you know what you're doing, roll with it. You know what I mean?
Okay,
That
gotcha.
said, that said, maybe is the answer because I was in a meeting this past week where Torque was and the engineers were talking about one of the changes that we have in the works related to enemy detection of players in certain conditions. And the both Torque and the engineer had been able to identify an area of AI basically detection behavior that was a little out of control and causing problems. And they were working to resolve that. And I believe that they had the fix checked into the build. And if that was checked into the build, might be well what they're talking about in this performance fix. But because I was not actually there, nor have I seen what actually got checked into the build, I don't know if that's even what they're talking about. But I
Gotcha.
know that that's in the works, and that sounds like about kind of what this might be, right?
Yeah,
So,
what I heard from players that I talked to is they didn't just they just didn't know what they should be looking for
hmm
in the preview.
well, I think that's deliberate though, in part because the answer is we want to know what you're seeing, especially on these kind of changes. The halo is what we're going to need to catch from crowdsourced behavior. You can do as much of that as you can internally, but especially when you're dealing with enemy detection of players or something like that, whether it's that specifically or some other thing like that, often it's just better to be like, just tell us what you're seeing, you know? And I think that that's the intention for this.
Okay, that's fair. Like you didn't want to
Yeah.
point players to hyper focus on something and miss other areas.
hmm
Okay, that's fair. So the next thing in the release notes was, or this could have been just in news, I'm not sure. The Eladrin Chaosmancer Iconic Heroic Bundle is now available in the DDO store. So there's now a bundle of the Eladrin race, Wild Mage, Sorcerer Archetype, and the Chaosmancer Iconic at a discounted price. Is there anything so I know a lot of people were looking for that for a while. You all had some issues on release, right? Initially.
Yeah, this really relates to that. So what happened is the Magicka Myth Draenor individual items that go for sale in the DDO store, typical behavior for our expansions, included the Eladrin Chaosmancer Iconic, just standalone Iconic. But then it ran into an issue where, because this was the first time where rather than granting a free subclass or a free class, we did a paid class. And it was causing some problems, even though we had it set to be okay. In theory, we had it set to be okay. It wasn't okay, and instead, people were being locked out from being able to actually play the Chaosmancer iconic heroes that they were purchasing. And this was in January, right? So we had to
Right.
pull that from it. And we're like, well, okay, so just get the iconic hero to recognize or grant Wild Mage as well. Easy enough, right? No, not even slightly easy, as it turns out. And it's become a bit of an engineering project to architect the ability to really recognize that kind of additional
Yeah, I gotcha.
stuff,
It's
additional stuff involving how things are unlocked for you behind the
yeah,
scenes.
basically because it
So,
was an
yeah,
archetype
yeah.
that required both the race and it required the iconic and the archetype. You need players have to have
Yeah,
both, and if
we
you
have to really create the structure that allows that to the game to understand that. And so
gotcha.
since that's not just a matter of changing a SKU in a field somewhere or something like that. It's a bigger project. So what we've done is put together. We wanted to do a bundle anyway. So what we did is we put out this bundle that includes the Eladrin, the Wild Mage, and the Chaos Mancer as one, and then priced it the exact same as the separate Chaos Mancer Iconic Hero that was released in January, while we do this work. And then once we do get in a position where we can release the Chaos Mancer as a standalone purchase, that bundle is going to go up to its regular price, which is why it's scratched out and has a big discount on it right now. Is because eventually it is going to go to its typical price. But we're pricing it for now so that anyone who wants the Chaos Mancer can just get it.
Gotcha.
And,
That makes
and
sense.
it's going to give you a few other things. Because typically with Iconic unlocks, it works for that character, but not for the whole account, right? So, like, if
Hmm.
you buy just an Iconic standalone, you can get whatever you need to for that character, but not for that account. You know, you can't make additional of that, of some of the subs. You will when you do this. So it's a good deal, and you should jump on it if you're interested, is what I'm saying. But
Gotcha. Makes sense. Makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
And Guacamole in chat is saying that we were talking about how many enhancement trees there were. He's saying there's 92 in the game. He says there's 27 race trees and 65 class trees. It's a lot of choice. Okay, well, I guess the next thing you all that's going on in the store, you all released another coffer. You all been doing these coffers,
Hmm.
where basically there's a three different tiers. There's different combinations of cosmetics, bank space, and shared bank space. So, what inspired this recent one, the Black Rose patron coffer?
So there is the concept of the Knights of the Black Rose in the Ravenloft campaign setting. And as such, we leaned on the lore and history of that group in the Ravenloft campaign setting to create a bundle. And that was the inspiration.
Gotcha. Okay. I legit, I just didn't know. I
There's
think
a bunch of people who are like, uh huh, yeah,
I've heard different things, but I just, as
yeah,
referenced before, just not a lore master at all, so I just have no idea.
yeah,
Okay. Well, I think it looks cool. And in full disclosure, SSG did gift me a coffer, which was very nice of y'all to support content creators like that.
yeah,
Um, but no, I think these coffers are cool because to me it's a good way to monetize the game, and I like to see you all monetize it that way because it's not just selling power, nothing like that. It's an optional thing. If you want some more space and some cool cosmetics, you can have it. But if not, then that's cool too. Doesn't hurt you. All right. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about or talk about was the Hydra raid, Den of Vipers, that released what 2 weeks ago? I think it
hmm,
was. Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't know. Are you okay with going into the raid a little bit? Because I don't know if you want to avoid
Yes, although
spoilers
to
still.
answer your first question, not since it's been released live. The
Yeah.
question is, have I played it yet?
Yeah.
And the answer is not since it's been live because of what I just described
No, that's
going on the other game
that's
side.
fair. That's
So all I
understandable.
really have seen is I wandered around in there on my admin character during development.
Gotcha.
But I have not actually sort of seen the final end result yet.
Gotcha. No, I really like it. I think it's one of the best raids you all honestly have done in quite a while. I like
Hmm.
the first fight, the Baylor fight, is really cool. I played it in a few different roles now as the main tank and as DPS, and I think it's really fun to play as a tank because in that first fight you have to kind of position yourself between the Baylor and the trash mobs because you want to get the Baylor to shoot the lightning at the trash mobs to bring down the shadow form, and I just think that's a fun mechanic. I really enjoy playing that one, as a tank. And then the Hydra looks really cool. I like how you all have focused more in that raid on having
Hmm.
different jobs for people to do. And I felt like in that raid, the party it's much more focused than some of your previous raids and getting the party to really work together and manage things. You've got the lanterns to
Yeah.
manage, and there's a lot going on with that raid.
The Hydra in particular is a really neat part and something we're really excited to have been able to bring to the game. The idea of doing a Hydra fight, has been a long standing one. And the
Hmm.
I think where it came from though, there's a question about where it came from. I think it was last year's PAX East, right? It
I
was the year
think.
after the one that came from the We did the monster vote for the one year, and then they did an internal vote, I think, on the Hydra the next year. But I wasn't there because I was busy at the meetup.
So was that PAX East 2023 or
I think
2024?
I think I think it was 2024,
Okay.
wasn't it?
I think it.
And for
I
like I
don't
say, I
know.
wasn't there, but I think that's when they were like, and we're going to do Hydra. I
You know,
think is where that came from.
I really
So
wanted to go last year,
yeah,
but my sister was having her first baby, and the baby's due date was like the same time,
yeah.
and I couldn't miss that, so I couldn't go. But
But the idea of
maybe
doing
this year.
a Hydra fight,
Yeah.
has been
Anyways.
cooking around for a decade plus, of course. But
Hmm.
the idea of and it's going to be next really was a product of last year's product management process, right? Is this
Hmm.
the year for it? Yeah, this is the year for it. So
Yeah. So I think the community's has had a very positive reaction to the raid. The one thing that uh, Galinar mentioned in chat, and I've seen a lot of players talk about, is the Baylor fight. Maybe feels like it's not quite worth doing because the optional chest doesn't really give ingredients. I know on, I mean it does, but I don't think it's. I don't believe it's guaranteed. I know when I've run it, it's only been on normal. We haven't gotten anything, so I don't know if the team would consider maybe making the Baylor fight a little bit more worth doing. I think that would be cool. I just think it's a really good fight, a cool fight. So I would love to see
I would
that if
need to
you all
check with
could consider doing
I would need to
something.
check with I think Steel Star on what the actual intention of that chest is. And I'd also be curious to see what the drop rate of that stuff is once you get up to elite.
Right. Maybe it's guaranteed on, I've only run it on normal. So I
Yeah,
don't know. Maybe it's guaranteed
yeah.
on elite R1, but yeah, but
But
I haven't gotten
like I
anything
said,
yet.
I myself don't know.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
yeah.
understand. I understand. Let's see. I guess that's about it for. Was there anything in the upcoming update you wanted to mention that I didn't talk about, or maybe I missed in the notes?
I think we basically have it covered.
Okay.
The other thing that's in the producers letter is we do have the 64-bit server project coming to DDO here as well later this year,
Yeah.
and so that has also been a big focus of our work in really the past couple of months, but for realsies and for the past month or so, it's full steam ahead on that. So
Yeah, and that's what I was going to do next. Get into the producers letter stuff, and I just had too much going on. I wanted to ask you guys like right after the producers letter dropped if you had some time to do a podcast, but I went on a trip to Tennessee recently. Had all this stuff going on, so this is a little bit older stuff now because the producers letter came out what like maybe a month
a
ago.
couple of weeks, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
a little while now. Yeah.
So, but yeah, the 64-bit servers was the first thing I was gonna ask you about. But I know DDO in the producers letter said that you all said that you'd be introducing a European server and then some new servers in. I assume they're gonna be Las Vegas as well, or do you?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Is there any? You may not be able to answer this. Do you have any idea on the number of servers?
It's an ongoing question, and that's why I can't give you a number right now.
Okay.
There's a world where it could be one or more for each, and we really just need to figure out before we actually do it. Well, okay, so if we expect X number of people, how many servers does that mean? And do that work. We know that the 64-bit worlds can handle much higher populations than the 32-bit worlds. We've seen that both on Cormier and on the other game side. And so we know roughly about what they can handle these days. Although, given on what's happening on the LOTRO side, we're that's a number that is currently being determined, right? So we'll have that discussion and we'll know sort of what to expect and whether that's one server for each or multiple servers for each or some variation thereof is really an ongoing process.
Is Cormier going to be open to transfers to Cormier at some point? Is that still the plan, or is that going to be kept as a fresh start server?
That
Do you
is
have
also an
still up for
ongoing
debate?
question.
Okay.
For the time being, once the Lanterns in the Mist event ends on April 15th, the guidance is that it will remain a VIP server. And whether that stays the case or we end up doing something else with it is really just something we're going to have to announce once all those other questions come into the mix.
Yeah, well, whenever you guys get that set up, I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of players that, unfortunately, I know of and I talk to on stream and Discord and all that, but I can't play with them because they're so established on a different server. So I'm really looking forward to being able to merge the population a bit here.
There is a world where there are people who like that it's a VIP only world. They like
Hmm.
that. And I don't know that we want to necessarily take it away from people either. So it's really going to come down to what makes the most sense for the population and the business. And that's something that I don't know that we can answer today.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I understand. I
yeah.
understand.
For no other reason than the event isn't even over yet.
Right,
So
right.
let's do that first, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
meant not just Cormier, but the other 64-bit
Yeah.
servers whenever they
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
But I know me personally, I would love to see just as few as possible that can be handled without too many performance issues because, and I
Yeah, I
love,
think that's the intention,
yeah,
right? That
okay.
is the
That is the
intention.
intention. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So what do I have down here next? Let's see. Oh, I know you can't say this, I'm sure, but have you all had any talks about the server names and of the new 64-bit servers?
Yes.
Yes. Anything you can say on that or no?
No.
No. Okay. All
I
right.
I saw a couple weeks ago some kind of internal survey going around of, hey, let's just what do you think? Here's a list. Which ones do you like? You know, that kind of thing. So
All right.
that's about where we are.
Okay. So, okay, the next thing I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I know you can't talk a lot about it, but Lamortia, you all announced, was the expansion for this year.
Hmm.
And I just want to ask you generally, why did you all decide to go with Lamortia this year and
We've
turn to
been wanting
Ravenloft?
to go back to Ravenloft as a campaign setting for a while. And the team has just been excited about Lamortia's sort of lore and story. It's a little more um, Frankenstein, you know, uh, rather
Right.
than vampires. Not that there aren't vampires, but you know what I mean. And just it seemed like a fun setting. It was what ultimately the team got passionate about wanting to do, and so that's really why we did it. We wanted to go back. You've been wanting us to go back in general. We've been hearing plenty of feedback of it would be cool to do another Ravenloft thing, and it just all fit together. So
No, I've been really looking forward to you all going back there, and I thought you would eventually. I know, I'm sure you guys know that players love Ravenloft, and it's one of the most beloved expansions you all have ever done for sure.
yep.
So, no, definitely a good choice. Oh, one thing, when the producer's letter dropped, I actually posted on the forums, and then Tolera responded to me about this. But why did you all decide to go with a full expansion? Because you all have been doing the full and then mini and alternating, and then you went full this year.
Kind of we've been doing that, but I
Ki-
don't know that we ever fully even established that
Right. I
pattern.
know you guys never
Yeah.
like confirmed that that's absolutely what you're going to do or anything, but that had been the pattern. Is all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
as far as I'm aware, we're doing expansions, and to some extent, whatever we called them to players was the same amount of work.
Okay.
Usually, is how it ended up, and so we're kind of moving away from that as a concept.
Oh,
But
okay.
that's not to say we couldn't do variable pricing on expansions, or have one that's maybe a little smaller that has a different price point. But I think we're moving away from this concept of which never really even got fully established of minis and regulars. So
Well, I know in the past when it was a mini, at least the few that were minis, you all either had a wilderness or a raid, but never both. And the
yeah,
fulls have always been both. It seemed to
yeah,
be the main difference to me.
yeah. Right. That did seem to be the main difference. Yeah.
But okay.
Like I say, it's
Yeah.
not to say that we wouldn't have something that maybe due to whatever content was included would have a different price point than what has become these days the standard. But I think in terms of is this year a mini or not, I think it's an expansion, and we'll have more info about.
Okay.
You'll see the list and you'll see the price point, and that's what it'll be. You know.
Yeah. Float asks, are two raid expansions gonna happen again? Is that something you all would ever consider doing again, like raids in an expansion? I'm just curious as someone like because
Yes.
raiding is
Yes.
my favorite thing to do in DDO personally. So anytime you all announce a raid or multiple raids, I'm always hyped about it.
I think we have found that trying to fit 2 raids into an expansion development schedule can be really tricky, and we haven't been particularly successful at launching these things on time when we've done multiple raids. But we like doing them, and so I think it really comes down to, well, and do we want development to be roughly done a month after, or do we want it to take another 4 months? You know what I
Gotcha.
mean? So sometimes we have to make those hard decisions on content of, well, can we fit 2 raids into this? And if we do even want to, if sometimes we want to do one post release because you want that extra beat or whatever, but can we actually fit that into the schedule and everything? And
Yeah.
so, I would never say never on that, but in general, it's tricky to successfully pull off 2 raids in an expansion.
Does it take a lot more time to do a raid versus say like what's faster to develop generally like a raid or say like 3 quests? Is that like
That's
equivalent
a good
or
question. If I would ask, I would pose that question to someone like a
okay?
Torque or a Knockback. I, I could give an answer and they would slap me, but
Okay.
I'm going to give it anyway. And I would say I think that's probably roughly about the same
Okay.
ballpark. 3 quests is a raid.
Because I know personally for say like Myth I
Yeah.
would have loved to see you all do a second raid in exchange, maybe do like 2 less quests. Because I think that for me, Myth and I like a lot of those quests, but it's a lot. And sorry, there's a siren going out my door.
Mhm.
Might be able to hear it. Um, but for me, it's like when I go to Mithranor, it's especially with the wilderness area running between the quests, it takes quite a while. So I would have been okay with say like a 12 quest saga and a second raid, even if the second raid was a short raid, like say like a VOD or something. Like I would have been okay with
Right,
that.
and that's what complicates that discussion a little bit as well, very much, because you've got long quests and short raids.
Hmm.
So it really does come down to, well, what size are we talking about, you know?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm also very biased because I love raids and as I said, it's my favorite thing in DDO is raiding for sure.
We often introduce unique mechanics and quests. I mean, there's a whole bunch of quests out there that stand alone for whatever unique storytelling mechanical thing happens in them. But a lot of that really is expected, I think, in a raid in a way that doesn't exist maybe in the same way you would for a quest. And so it's not just a matter of raw graphics, asset, combat encounters, and all that. You get into a level of expectation where you want the raid to feel different. You want the raid to be different. You want the raid to have some kind of feature to the fight that makes it stand alone. And a lot of that can be very time consuming. So
All right. Well, the next thing I wanted to ask, well, you probably can't tell us this yet either, but are you guys looking at a cap increase this year anytime soon? Because traditionally they'd been
I
with full expansions.
I'm gonna have to defer that. I should know the answer to that, but I don't.
Okay.
Is the answer to that?
Okay. No
And I don't want
worries.
to. I don't want to be wrong.
Yeah,
So
I understand. As we said before we started, I understand if you can't say something or
yeah.
you don't want to speculate. I get it. You're in a I understand position you're in. So, all right. So the next thing you all announced was Dampier. So, what made you all choose Dampier? I mean, obviously it goes along with the Ravenloft theme, but is there anything particularly you're excited about
Yeah, it's the
with Dampier?
Ravenloft theme. That's why on Dampier, because we have a long list of things we'd like to do, and that list gets pulled from regularly in addition to being added to. And since we wanted to do Ravenloft, they just kind of went down the list and were like, well, which one do we want to do then? And that's the one that came up. So, but ultimately, it's because of the sort of what kind of half vampire sort of nature of the Dampier. So.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what and maybe you can't say this either, but what direction you want to take the race? Is it you want to offer options for both melee and casting? Is it going to be more of one or the other? Is there
I
anything you can
don't know.
say?
I haven't yet seen the systems team design for it,
Okay.
so I can't speak to that.
All right. No worries. Let's see. Next thing on my list here, we already talked about the progressively unlocking events. Let's see. Oh, the new hardcore like event was mentioned in the producer's letter. There is some language there about there's Fey mischief afoot. Is there anything you can say about that? Probably not. I mean, I'm not asking you to announce the details or
Well,
anything. Is there anything like what made you all decide to continue down this
it
kind of
really
direction?
goes into the longer term projects that have been everything from the Litho event to the hardcore servers, and in some ways even going back to the old tent explosion of 2008 and everything, right? And so
Hmm.
it really comes down to we've got some ideas because we want to do a hardcore like thing. We know that players like hardcore, but we also know that the individual hardcore servers have impacts, not just on hardcore players, but on their friends and people on the other servers as well. And the players are well aware of that as well. Years worth of forum discussions on the topic,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So the idea in we've done things like Lanterns in the Mists and other events on the regular servers where you can kind of opt into this difficulty and opt into that. And we've been playing on the edges of that for a while. And so there's some thinking of what would an opt-in hardcore on the live worlds look like as an event? And except I don't think we're quite going that far either. And so like I say, it's still going to be an experiment. It's still going to be in the process. I think if you're saying I want exactly a new hardcore server, I don't know that this is 100% going to fit that. But I think the intention is to try to make a whole bunch of people happy and have a good time, and do something special later this year. So
Yeah, and it seems to me like you really want to thread that needle of giving the hardcore experience, but also not draining the servers by creating a separate server for it. For me, just when I looked at it, I think the thing that I would like to see you all do a little differently next time, and you all mentioned this Tolero mentioned this in the letter, but if you're going to offer a hardcore lantern, there has to be something super shiny and super special to go for more than just
yes,
just the same thing with a little skull on it. I know a lot of players want to see, like, I thought it would have been a lot of more players would have engaged with the hardcore lantern aspect of it if they were, say, like, instead of because you all had the panther, right? Or when it was a saber-toothed tiger, I think it was.
yeah.
If you had, like, say, an undead saber-toothed tiger, maybe for the hardcore route, instead of just the skull on the side, I think you would have seen a lot more players get interested in it. So, like, completely different cosmetic, well, maybe, I mean, the same thing, but just a completely different skin on it,
Yeah.
I think would attract a lot more players, because what players want to show off that they completed that challenge. And if it's just a little skull, on the side, it's just not compelling enough.
Yeah, we got that feedback
Yeah,
loud and
which
clear.
I'm
That
sure you all
was
know.
that was pretty clear. I think as a bare minimum in the future that shield's going to be a whole heck of a lot bigger.
Yeah,
But where I think in general that is what we would like to lean into as well is make it look from a distance. You're going to know that that person did the hardcore.
right.
So yeah.
Okay. So some of the other things that were mentioned is some of the recent things that were released. The first one was the new archetype, Dragon Disciple, which is kind of a monk caster hybrid, has SLAs that cost key. There's different Dragon Breath like attacks and Draconic Burst. You get to choose your elements. Have you had any experience playing this yet? I don't know if you played
Yeah,
it on your
just a
live
little
stream.
bit. I've got a character in the teens at the moment that I've been leveling up from one on a Dragon Disciple, and it's been going pretty fine. It's fun. So
Yeah. So you like it?
yeah, I do. I do. I have the one I have been playing. I have to admit is a little more melee focused. So I haven't quite wrapped my head around the SLA part and the spellcasting part of the Dragon Disciple yet. Other than the basics of you want that number to be as big as you can, re-spell power, and that kind of thing. I have some learning to do, but
Yeah, I think I haven't.
yeah.
I've been playing regular monk, but I haven't played Dragon Disciple yet since it's released. But I think the way I would build it would be to just kind of go straight caster focused and get a bunch of meta magics, take a bunch of meta magics, and just use the SLAs just the whole way to level 20, and then I guess punch stuff occasionally to get some key. But the key
Part of it
costs are
is a
pretty
me
low.
problem though as well, because especially because like I say, I'm only in, I think I can't remember what I am now, 13, 14, maybe something like that.
Uh-huh.
I don't really need to worry about casting spells so much to get through that stuff. It's not till later that I really have to worry
Yeah.
about it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm meleeing just fine through the content. So
Gotcha. Well, regular monk I can say more about. So I purposely went and rolled up a monk. Really, the first time I played monk splashes before, but I've never played like straight monk, really ever. So say like a month, no, a couple weeks before you all did the release the changes on the live servers, I rolled up a monk because I wanted to experience, okay, what's old monk like versus the new monk, and yeah, it's I'm enjoying it. It's very strong. The healing is a lot better. There's like a healing hands, I think it is one of the light finishers that is now in the tree has been a game changer for the character. So it's been really strong. I've been enjoying it. It's I think it's gonna be very meta.
I've at this point I've really just need to focus on what you're telling me rather than what I'm supposed to be telling anyone else on how to feel about Dragon Disciple and Monk. So that's really
Oh
what
yeah,
I've
yeah.
been doing is really focusing on what other people have been saying about the monk. I'm not a monk expert either,
Gotcha.
especially. So
Yeah, no, I'm not, and I'm if it's a challenging class to play because there's so many different active abilities you have access to, which makes it really strong in that basically any different type of mob in the game a monk can lock down because you've got like Jade for say undead, and you've got Stunning Fist for more fleshy monsters, and there's a lot of options that monk has, and it's I think one of the hardest, if not the hardest class to play in the game in terms of skill
yeah,
cap, but it's
yeah,
also
I think
extremely
that's true.
rewarding if you have that skill. But no, I've been enjoying it. Um, I guess the next thing I wanted to mention was the changes. Oh, this is I think a big one. The changes to reincarnation XP.
Hmm.
So previously, before these changes, it required for your first life 1.9 million XP to get to level 20. Second life 2.85 million. Third, in all subsequent lives 3.8. So this was changed to now your first through fourth lives require 1.9 million XP to get to 20. Fifth, sixth, and seventh require the 2.85 million, and then all subsequent lives are 3.8 and above. So it's going to be a lot easier for new characters to level and get their second and third past life.
It's quite a bit less punishing,
Yes, yeah,
and it also makes it less punishing to get to the 32 point builds.
yeah. So
So
that's the other thing I was going to ask. You still get say 28 to 34 on your second life, right? Even though the
yeah,
XP is the same, right? I assume.
structurally it's all staying the same. It's just that number, just the XP number is being adjusted.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think this is going to be huge for new players for sure. Especially second and third life, because you think if you're say a free to play player and you unlock that elite open on third life and you can still only level with the 1.9 million required, that's going to be huge in getting them to catch up for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's new players and players who have generally not engaged with the reincarnation system as much, maybe due to the punishing nature of it. As you state, how many players of DDO right now have more than four lives on their characters, right? The number's quite high. But there's a large group as well that does not have that. So we really wanted to help out those folks, bring them in, and then also it's just a sheer reflection of when True Reincarnation started. There were these many classes, and how many times could you reincarnate at X state versus now? The number has just grown so much higher with all the releases that we've done over the years that it just made sense to be less restrictive.
Twitch chat, if you guys have any questions or any topics you want us to talk about, go ahead and post that right now because we're getting to the end of my list of things to talk about. Let's see. Waisakai asks, is there any talk about the 3-day timer? Not sure what he's talking about. Probably I guess the raid timer?
Yeah, I have not heard of any discussion about removing the raid timer. There are reasons it's in place. I don't know that it has to be 3 days, but at the same time, we are a business that sells raid timer bypasses. So, I don't know. I don't know is the answer on that. I certainly haven't heard anything about it.
Oh, Dilemma says also the reincarnation timer. I'm not sure what the reincarnation timer. I know there's a timer. I'm not sure
Oh,
what the length
yeah.
is.
Um, that is as much to do with making sure data stays in good condition as anything else. If we removed that altogether and someone was reincarnating upon reincarnating and stuff, that could cause all sorts of problems.
Okay, so it's
Um,
more
yeah.
for systems systems
Well,
engineering
I mean, there
reasons.
may be other reasons too. There's kind of maybe gameplay balance and other reasons, and anti-fraud and other reasons like that as well that have that in place. But my guess is there's a bunch of reasons why it's in place, and I wouldn't see us changing that anytime soon.
Jabber says, has SSG ever considered a ransack timer bypass?
No, it hasn't come up. I know that I've seen the forum threads, we've seen the Reddit threads, etc. Uh, it's somewhat unusual, I would say, for players to be like, yes, we like this pay to win thing. And we haven't really pulled the trigger on it. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe someday. I mean, in some ways, it's like, well, if just don't tell the executives, right? Because it's like if you're an executive, and there's like players wanting to do this, okay, you know.
Yeah, what are the reasons exactly that you all choose to have a ransack in the game?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of
Ransack timer.
reasons. I mean, there's again a million reasons.
Yeah.
Everything from anti-exploit to uh, you want players to engage with the content more than just one day. Things like that.
Okay. Jugger says, when will Dragonlord Might and Order be fixed? Is that the trance? I'm not sure what he's referring to. I think that's the trance.
I have
I didn't know it
seen
was
a forum
broken.
thread on that bug, but I have not. I'm not really sure the details of it.
Okay. I haven't played a Dragonlord I've played a lot of Dragonlord, but it's been. Okay, he's saying for strength and charisma. Okay. I played a lot of strength based Dragonlord. I never saw a problem with it, but maybe it's something that happened recently. Oh, Weisekai says legendary TR win. Probably not for a while.
I don't think we would want to consider that until we were done with that level band. If and when we get to when we get to level 40, it'll happen
Yeah,
someday.
that's what I
And
assumed.
then we'll do it.
Because
So,
you all have been slowly building up the sea of content, I guess you could say,
hmm
up to 40. So I think the community's been under the assumption by the time we get to level 40, that's when we'll see it. But I know with
yeah.
Epic, right? You guys introduced Epic reincarnation when I think the cap was 28. I'm
Did
thinking.
we?
I
Well, I
think
mean, who knows what
I know it
future
was.
Russ will decide to do?
Yeah,
Maybe we could do that at 38 or something
yeah.
like
Because
that.
I was
But
what? Because yeah. 28 to 20 was an Epic reincarnation for a while. Um,
yeah,
so some
that's
people are
true. That's true.
yeah, some people are mentioning, oh, it only lets you train up. So apparently the Dragonlord trance only lets you train up to the first tier. It must be a recent thing that happened.
That's a systems bug. I'm sure. I'm sure there's a ticket on it. I've seen the forum threads. I'm sure it's in process. I would expect it in the next game update,
Okay.
probably.
Big T asks, how is the general mood feeling around the 64-bit full transfers being ready on time? I don't think you all ever set a date for
We
that.
have not. We have an internal is it on time, but there is no external is it on time. And the reason for that is we have a lot of work to do. Not just on the DDO side, but we're rolling out those servers on the LOTRO side right now. We want to take the time to be like, well, what can we learn for the DDO side from what we just did? And that is on top of the work that we know we need to do to allow for some kind of mechanism to transfer guilds, for one.
Hmm.
Your pet stable, mount stable, all the as much of the things that are account, you know, server based as can be transferred. We want to be able to let people transfer over. And there's a whole bunch of things that just simply does not exist on the DDO side that is in place on the Lord of the Rings side. On the Lord of the Rings side, you click the transfer button and it'll just um, sell your premium houses and things like that, and then give you stuff on the other end. That technology doesn't exist yet on the DDO side, so we have to do that work this spring.
But the intent though,
Yeah,
the intent though is to let people transfer everything. Even is it guilds and stuff included? Is that the intent?
we'll see. But
Okay.
yeah, we want to be as generous as possible with it, because we want you to be able to bring over the stuff that you need to bring over. It's possible, for example, on astral shards, we could be like, well, you have till X date to spend it down. We could, but even so, we don't have to if we don't want to. I mean, we'll see what we can do there, right? So, but for the most part, we want people to be able to do that and probably fix that monster manual in the process, I would assume. So,
Yeah, I've heard about that. Of that there's some kind of bug when on monster manuals on transfer.
right. Because the you can't re-earn monster manual rewards is ultimately the issue with that. Now you could say I'm not re-earning it. I already earned it. Yes, but the server doesn't know that, right? So the
Mm.
server needs a process by which to re-earn it for you, and that's one of many things that is going to have to get sorted through. And because of all that, we have internal dates and times on the calendar that we want to meet, but we don't know. How could we possibly know to any kind of public facing way to give a date at this point? Let's see what happens with LOTRO. Let's see what we can learn from that. Meanwhile, the work to do everything I just said is ongoing. And the work to pick names, order hardware, sign those deals that you got to sign, all that stuff is underway. And as we get further along, we'll know more, like what a real date's going to look like.
Okay, gotcha. It's done when it's done,
Yeah.
basically.
Next week.
Yeah, next week. It will be done on August 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay, so just kidding, guys. If you're listening, we're just kidding. Okay, DDO Experience asks, when is Cordovan going to raid with TCO again? I don't.
I'm always down for raiding with people. I'd be happy to. Yeah.
I know Cozy was trying to get you to raid with us a couple weeks ago. So if you're ever
Yeah, I
around,
really
you're
wanted to
always
that day.
welcome.
Unfortunately, I had another commitment at the time. I had to
Yeah,
do something right in the middle of your raid thing.
I understand. Yeah, you're busy. Yeah, I was raid at 3 p.m. Eastern on Atlantis. You're always welcome if you ever want to join us.
Yep.
If you ever need something to do on a Saturday.
Yeah. I will say that's tough, right? Because I do live and breathe DDO all week long,
I
and
know.
sometimes
Yeah,
you
I
do want to
understand.
have that time off a little bit.
Well,
So,
yeah, and that's what I was thinking when I asked you about your job at the
yeah.
beginning when we were talking, because I in your shoes I don't know, like you'd want to get away from it because it's your job. I don't know if I'd want to if I would play as much just casually because I am around it all day. So
Yeah.
it's a tough position to be in, I guess. Even though I'm
The
sure you love
counter
the
to
game.
that is that as you get into development, and I can't count myself as a developer per se, right? But I do have industry understanding of that, and playing the game that you see get made is also its own reward.
Hmm.
So it kind of all balances out really in the end.
DDO Experience says we want Cordovan in our R10 riding the storm out.
No, you don't. I mean, depends if you want to win or not.
I guess if you want a soulstone, right, to carry around.
Yeah,
I've never run RTSO and R10. I couldn't imagine the lightning damage.
I promise not to deliberately kill you. That's about the best I can manage. So.
Wolf Kobold asks, what is the reason for having a commission on the Astral Shard exchange? Oh, you're talking about the fee, right? I mean, I think the answer is going to be because they're business and they need to make money. I mean,
Yeah, and long term cycling out of currency and that sort of thing. So
um, let's see. Any other questions, guys, in chat? Guys, post them now because I think we're at the end here. The TDO experiences, you'll be a rock star. We got this. Okay. Well, I think that's it for questions. So I think we'll go ahead and close things up here.
yep.
Let's see. Oh, wait. I got to ask you non DDO stuff. I want to
Okay.
ask you about. So you got a
All
vinyl
right.
record podcast
I
with Drac,
do.
right?
I do.
What do you
It's
want to say
it's
about that?
somewhat DDO related. It's DDO adjacent. It has nothing to do with DDO yet, only because we haven't released a DDO record. And you know I would love
Yeah.
to if we could. But yeah, so for a couple of years now, I'm a big vinyl nerd. I've been one for decades, and turns out Draculetta from DDO Players News is as well. And for a couple of years now, when I've been doing guests on his show and stuff, we've been talking, man, we should do a vinyl podcast. And finally, this was the year that it happened, this past year. So I guess this past fall, we kicked it off, and we've been doing it not on a regular schedule because it's really whenever our schedules get together and we can make it happen. And yeah, it's all about music nerd. We go deep. This is for if you're a record collector, if you've got a wall of CDs, if you never got rid of your 8 tracks, this is the one for you. So
Nice. Yeah, vinyl was something I've never really had room for, but I do have a lot of CDs, and I'm a
yeah,
big music person, obviously. So,
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. I would imagine so.
yeah,
But yeah, I've been a vinyl guy since before it was cool, and
yeah,
then I've been buying CDs since the '90s as well. So,
yeah. And talking about a DDO record, that would be really cool. And I appreciate that
so
you guys release the music on YouTube. I don't know about anyone else, but I often will put that on when I'm at work. Doing accounting number because I'm an accountant. That's my
yeah.
job, but I do like number crunching, and I just put that on the side, and it's nice. It's nice to have.
Next year will be DDO's 20th anniversary,
Yes, it will
and
be.
one of the big check boxes on my 20th anniversary list is some kind of music release. Let's be real, probably digital, but I want to do another soundtrack kind of thing, like kind of best of sort of thing, if we can make it happen. So
Oh, and I saw this was probably oh gosh, probably a year ago at this point, but I know Bill Champagne I think did the like a rock version of the Dryad
hmm
and the Demigod. That was cool. Was there any reason why you all did that? Was it just like
fun.
something he wanted to do just for fun? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
All
that was
right.
just for fun. That was, I mean, it was like we wanted to experiment with the sound of it. What if it was a rock thing instead of whatever it ended up being? We have multiple takes, right?
Yeah,
And
that
so
would
it
be
was, you
cool.
could just kind of think of it as like a B side or something like that. But
That would be cool if like once like maybe 1 in 10 times you run the raid it does the rock version.
yeah,
That
yeah.
would be neat. Um yeah, Druid's Fire says it was awesome. I love the Dryads normal music, but that one was legendary.
Oh, before I move on too much, let me do the actual YouTuber promo thing.
Oh
You
yeah,
can
yeah. I was gonna have
find
you do
you,
that
you
for
can
sure.
find the Record Players podcast at youtube.com/at the Record Players channel. The Record Players channel on YouTube. And we're on TikTok at the Record Players. I can't believe I was able to grab that name. No one had the
Wow, at
Record
record
Players on
players?
TikTok. On TikTok.
Wow.
But I didn't. Someone else already had it on YouTube. So we're
Uh,
the Record Players channel on YouTube.
yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, Drac, who he does that podcast with, also has his own DDO podcast, DDO Players
hmm
News. So you all can go check that out as well. Oh, and the last thing I want to ask you about non-DDO stuff. I know you do Atari YouTube videos, so I've watched some of your stuff. So you're a big
Yeah,
Atari fan, huh?
I am. I am a big Atari nerd. Atari 2600 in particular, but I like everything. And yeah, I have a Mock Duck plays games. When I'm my non-professional gamer handle is Mock Duck. It's been that for 20 some years now. And so I've got a personal YouTube channel where I just really nerd out about Atari stuff. I haven't. I had to take a break from it though, about the last 6 months or so, just because life has been too busy, and I've been doing the record players thing and other things in my life. So that's a little on the slow side these days. But every now and then I'm still doing stuff.
Nice. Yeah, Atari was a little bit before my time. I did own some of the compilations growing up that were on like PS1, PS2, and I did play those a lot. But I was really into well, lately I've been really into NES. I've been playing a lot of NES. I have a NES sitting behind me, so and I have a
Yeah.
second YouTube channel myself where I will occasionally upload something or stream something. I just streamed a full playthrough of Simon's Quest last week. That was fun.
Well, within reach, I've got this. This thing is. If I wanted to sell it, I'd probably
Nice.
make about $1,000 on YouTube.
Nice.
And this is a Butcher Billy reissue box set of the 2600 carts, and that's a nice dealio there too. But that's the kind of thing I get into on my channel, and that one is just Mock Duck plays games. So,
Nice. No,
yeah.
like growing up, I really liked playing Robotron. That was I think a 5200 game, but I really like playing Robotron, and then Breakout. And I like a lot of the recharge games that they've released on it's like Xbox or PlayStation lately.
Mhm.
But I think we'll go ahead and just close things out here. Is there anything else that you want to ask me, or you want to mention or plug?
We have got a couple weeks left of our free access period on Cormier. And a couple weeks is honestly, if you want to do a little work on it, you can get a couple of the easier rewards, no problem, on that lantern durability stuff. So if you haven't joined yet and you want to check out, get some of those rewards, or just see what the 64-bit server is like, you got a couple weeks yet to do that. Um, Otherwise, it's really just full steam ahead on the preview cycle for update 71 and then its release. So,
Okay, cool. All right then. Well, guys, we'll go ahead and end the podcast for today. As mentioned at the beginning, if you guys can find this podcast on YouTube, at Axel's DDO channel, or you can find it on Spotify. Just type in Axelcast. Thank you again, Cordovan, for joining, taking the time. I really appreciate it.
yeah,
Have a
thanks.
good rest of your Sunday.